Hello, everybody. A warm welcome to Wisdom from North. Today on my show, I have the financial journalist who grew tired of her own criticism and control and who set out on a journey to explore generosity. Her name is Kathrine Aspaas, and she has created quite a movement in Norway with her book, The Age of Generosity, From Envy to Admiration, which is now also coming out in English. Kathrine, welcome back to Wisdom from North.
Thank you, Jannike.
We did an interview 1.5 years ago.
Yes.
And after that, you've been traveling around Norway doing, I think, around 120 talks in like church communities, for politicians, for journalists, for oil companies, businesses. And you've created quite a movement with your philosophy of being transparent and flawsome and open. And it has touched many people. And now your book is coming out in English, which I'm very excited about because I cried when I read it.
That's a good thing. When you cry, you release oxytocin in your system, and it's actually making us happier to cry. It's a paradox, but we become connected to the human experience when we cry because it's very connecting.
Yes, I believe in crying too, and I think we have been talking about that today. But your book is called The Age of Generosity. But what was interesting was that you haven't been that generous earlier in your life because you were a journalist. You were very critical, and you pointed out what people did wrong, and you had a shift. You had a transformation which created and birthed this book. Yeah. Can you tell us about how that shift was and what happened?
Well, I'm an economist and I'm a financial journalist, and as you say, I was very critical and I was skeptic, and that made me. I realized that it made me not very generous. It stood in the way of generosity. And I also saw that the media we have today, with the critical angles all the time, is actually creating stress in a large level. And so I figured out, okay, let me try and see what's on the other side of critique and control. And that's when the journey started towards generosity. And I found in that journey, of course, I met myself, which was not, it's not always very comfortable to meet oneself. And what I met was my own envy. I met that feeling of envy towards my sister. Not very good stuff. But thankfully, I had read Professor Brené Brown's books about shame, so I could meet that envy without shame.
Yeah, because she's a huge inspiration for you.
Brené Brown is a huge inspiration. She is the queen of vulnerability. She's a researcher and a professor, and she talks about vulnerability in a total new way. That vulnerability it's not weakness, as I thought it was. It's actually the opposite of weakness. It's our most accurate measurement of courage. So being vulnerable, like I was when I looked on I had a peek on my own envy, and I just relaxed and said, okay, this is not very comfortable. And I started to look at it, and what I found there is what I call the alchemy of feelings. Because what I found in my own envy was admiration. That my envy was admiration gone astray. And I admire my sister. I admire the people I envy, and then we can relax. And this is interesting, not because it's about me. It's interesting because it's about a lot of us. In Norway, we have something called the law of jante. You're not supposed to be better than us. And I think that is actually envy or admiration gone astray. So when we put envy in a petri dish and study it, we can actually find admiration. And this is interesting in the workplace as well, because there's a lot of envy in the workplace, a lot of admiration gone astray. And if we're transparent and open and willing to admit and put those feelings forward without shame, that it's a deeply human experience, being envious or being greedy or feeling that we don't judge each other or ourselves that much. So it's been a long journey.
Yeah, but this journey, I mean, did it start when or while you were in Aftenposten, which is one of the biggest newspapers in Norway, or did it start after you stopped working there? Because often I feel like you have to go really or meet the darkness in life before you kind of have that shift. So I'm wondering, where did that shift happen?
It happened gradually. It's not like one big dark hole. It happened when I had an epiphany at work, where I suddenly saw I was so furious one day because I had to write about school politics and kindergarten politics. And I had just come from New York with my fresh master's degree in economics and international affairs, and I wanted to write about the big things, the important stuff like the World Bank, the IMF, the NATO top meeting, and I had an epiphany that what am I doing? What is this hierarchy of the press? What is this? Why am I furious to write about children? And then I realized that in my world and in the media world, we have a hierarchy where war and finance is on top, and children and peace and church choirs is on the bottom. Like life is on the bottom and death is on the top of our hierarchy. So that was one awakening, and I thought, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. When I write about finance, I'm going to do it from the angle of a child. I mean, when I write about Wall Street, how does the things going on Wall Street affect children? I want to combine it, and I want to turn this hierarchy upside down and play with it and see what happened. And this has happened, and it's a huge. There's a lot of people waking up now, seeing these hierarchies and seeing the high accept we have for violence. We were talking about this. We have such an amazing accept of seeing violence. It has this strange prestige in a way. While tears, we were talking about tears earlier, tears have very low prestige. And it's like the human condition has low prestige, and the conflict has high prestige. And I want to be a part of the movement that does something with that, because I don't think it's right.
And what is so beautiful, I feel like, is that you're not only talking about it, you're trying to live it yourself. I mean, you were standing in the opera saying that you were envious of your sister. Yes. And people were applauding. That was a strong thing to do.
I didn't think in the moment. I was doing a job as a journalist on stage, interviewing 3 authors, amazing authors, and we were talking about vulnerability, the vulnerability of life. And I had the worst day in my life. My sister had her birthday with all her friends and family around her, and I was so envious of her. She was so, she's so rich in every aspect of her life, with children and with her husband and with her garden, a marvelous garden, and she grows her own vegetables. It's like, and I was at that point, that is 4 or 5 years ago. I was single and without children, and I didn't have a job because I quit my job to start the journey. And I just turned around to the audience and told them, because we're talking about vulnerability, and that's easy to talk about, not so easy to share, to actually live. And when I really, for the first time, had a taste of what Brené Brown calls the power of vulnerability. Because when the audience, it was like 400 or 500 people, suddenly stood on their feet, applauding, and some even shouted "Bravo!" And I was like, "What is this?" And it gave me the chills. And when envy can get that kind of response, we have a lot of forbidden feelings who can get a lot of good response out there.
Yeah.
And it's been a road, a map for me ever since, this vulnerability. When I'm in a vulnerable situation, like now, it's a vulnerable situation. I'm talking English. I haven't done that for a while, and I just.
But we're doing it anyway.
We're doing it anyway, and courage. It's a lot of Brené Brown here, but courage is not being afraid. Courage is thinking, what is so important for me to do that I'll do it even if I fail? Courage is doing things that I might fail in because it's so important to get it done.
But how vulnerable shall we be? If because I'm thinking there's always a balance. I mean, some people can be too vulnerable, and I feel often that I'm very open and can be vulnerable in front of my family. I've been crying a lot in front of my family, and sometimes I'm thinking that I should toughen up a bit, while others need to do the opposite, need to show emotions. But have you thought about that? Like, if there's a balance, like, how do we find that balance?
I think it's about when I only know for myself that when I own my story, I own my vulnerabilities, I could talk about my envy because I own it. It's mine. And I'm even proud of it because it means I admire someone. Like very slim women, I could be very irritated. I could be, but now I think it's admiration. It's actually admiration gone astray. And I can talk talk about these things because I own the story. And I'm not it's not so important to me anymore how people respond to it, because it's my story. And I think that's vulnerability is something we need to go through alone. That's also a human condition but we have like 1 or 2 friends. Then we're very lucky to have 1 or 2 near people who can be there when we really need to do the work on owning the story. I mean, we all have these stories that we need to take with us and live.
So you're saying we shouldn't be vulnerable in public necessarily?
No. but it's always a choice. When I'm in a meeting with 3 people, you have a choice to choose either to fight or flight. That's what I used to do all the time. I would fight back when the going gets tough, and it does, you know. I would fight or I would leave. Usually I would fight because I'm a fighter. But now I can take a step back. Take a step back and think, what is the wholehearted response to this? What is the wise and wholehearted response to the feeling I have now? If I'm afraid or stressed or even insulted, it's a practice. It's an awareness that I can now think, how would a vulnerable, wholehearted response be to this situation? And not only Brené Brown talks about this, but also another hero of mine, it's Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman, professor in psychology. He has the Nobel Prize of economics. Daniel Kahneman. He got the Nobel Prize precisely to prove what we're talking about now. Wow. That human feelings has a huge part of the economics of how we're doing business. It's very emotional.
But everything is emotional to me.
Everything is emotional. But when I studied economics 25 years ago, we were rational people. We could put people into an Excel sheet, and we would have the answer. And it was very stringent. It was very clean. But it's wrong, you know. So we get financial crisis because we don't have the awareness of how do we actually create financial markets that rewards us doing wise decisions in the long run. We yet have to design financial markets. We have to redesign financial markets. I don't know if that's going to happen in my lifetime. I hope so. But we're on our way trying to reflect on these issues. And emotions is a mega trend in economics right now. If you read the Harvard Business Review, if you read any leadership program. So Daniel Kahneman talks about how we tend to think fast, we tend to jump to conclusions because we're afraid. But he says, take a step back and really lean into the discomfort. Lean into this discomfort of fear, of envy, of any not very comfortable situation. It's like yoga of the mind. It's stretching. So his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, it's a very good book.
Yeah, and so is your book. And back to it, the title is The Age of Generosity. Now, do you think we are in an age of generosity, or is it something you wish we were in a way?
We are on our way into a new era of being human. That's not my words. It's New York Times writer and author David Brooks in his book Social Animal. We're on our way to an era driven by transparency, openness, and that's not for sissies. Being open is very challenging for businesses, for politics, Swiss banks starts to open their books now because we demand it. We don't want banks to be part of terror financing. So we start to talk about these things now. We're moving towards a more open society, and neuroscience shows us that we are in a big way awarded chemically when we help each other, when we cry.
We're awarded?
We're rewarded. It's like the body says, yay! It releases oxytocin. It releases oxytocin is called the moral molecule by this other author, Paul Zak. He's a professor in neuroeconomics. Do you know what I mean? I mean, neuroeconomics is it's like you take blood tests and see how much oxytocin you have in your blood. And it's when I give you a hug, when I help you out, I am immediately rewarded. So these things start to be scientific. It's old wisdom, but now we can actually more and more prove that it's true.
Then it's necessary to give yourself love, like hugging yourself.
We're hardwired for love and connection. It's why we're here. Social science shows us that bulletproof doesn't really exist in this world, but we know that when people in the workplace, if we feel a sense of belonging, meaning, and love for what we do, the results comes natural. It doesn't start with a bottom line. Leaders don't start with a bottom line anymore. It's not really, because that's not really it's not really getting the best out of us. While visions get the best out of us, dreams get the best out of us, connection to other people get the best out of us. So we're moving from an era of critique and control to an era of trust and love. Trust instead of control. Of course, we'll have economics and we'll have accountants, but also the accountants know that we're actually changing the world. Take the car producer Tesla example. The car producer Tesla, a very inspiring company. And Elon Musk, the founder, is a very inspiring guy. He's changing the world. And Tesla is not only changing the world away from fossil fuels, which is very dangerous in many ways. It creates wars. It's not only going from fossil fuels to electrical cars, it's also opening up all its patents. In this June, Tesla said to all industry out there, just have a look inside our technology and use it as much as you want, because we need to be together solving these problems. You see, that is an act of generosity, and it's an act of visionary. It's a visionary act.
And you're saying that collaboration is a new competition, or
collaboration it's a splendid example of that. That collaboration. We used to compete and compete and compete, and it's fun to compete. We will still compete. It's in us, you know. But it's when we manage to be as great and grand as Elon Musk and Tesla. That, come on, let's not be childish. Let's work together on finding the solution that can save the world. That is, collaboration is the new competition.
And it seems logical to me. I just observed, you were doing like this, fighting. It need to be critical. And of course, things are going to be difficult and hard. Instead of, opening up and being like, yes, there's success enough for everybody. Yeah. Yes, come and see our cars. Of course, there's flow there. I mean, it's logical. It makes sense. It's about energy, I think.
You could also see on my language. You could see the language. I'm struggling to find English words, but I was struggling, to compete. Yeah. And I think the age of generosity also, we need new words. We need new ways of looking at work. Just take the expression to work hard. Yeah. We have to work hard. Of course we get depressed. And we get cortisol, which is the opposite. Cortisol, the stress hormone. We don't want so much of that. It's causing depression. We don't want it. We want oxytocin. We want eye contact. So, of course, when we say work hard, I need to work hard, that freaks me out. Why not work wise and soft? We can work, of course, work smart is inside the old system. We can work smart, that's okay. But work wise and work fun and work soft. It's totally possible. And the results after I started to work wise and soft and fun, it's been a transition.
I think your book should be in schools, because it's something about students and pupils and what we're teaching our students and our pupils to work hard. Testing, measuring. And I read it in the newspaper, even Aftenposten, how the young people are struggling because there's so much, they need to become something. They have tests and homework all the time. And they're not handling it. And I think that it's important that we grown-ups talk about this and become good examples for the young people.
That is leadership. That's actually leadership. And I have 3 hypotheses here. And one of them is responsibility is the new freedom. Responsibility is freedom. So we as adults, we are all leaders. All of us are leaders to the children, to the people coming after us. And if we are closing up, disconnecting, pleasing, performing, perfecting, and work hard, we never show them what life is about. That's where the word flawsome comes in. Yes. We need to go out and be flawsome. We need to go out and make mistakes and show them that it's human to make mistakes. It's even necessary to make mistakes. I play the piano. How could I possibly learn how to play the piano without making mistakes? I make 1,000 mistakes every day when I rehearse. And we need to get the shame out of the mistakes, to encourage the children to go out and do new things. And we have to do it with them. We have to do it along with them. But we don't have to, but we want to. We will want to.
But this word flawsome, let's dig into that, because that came to you in a way through trend watching.
Yes, trendwatching.com. Trendwatching.com. I love you. It's a trend institute, and they're very generous. They give away a lot of freebies, and of course you pay to get the deeper analysis of it. But and 2 years ago, this word came from over the Atlantic Ocean and into my computer on Bislett, Oslo, and it was flawsome. It was one of the consumer trends of the major consumer trends in 2012. And it's about we're so tired of companies that has no soul. I mean, companies who are just thinking about their bottom line, they don't inspire us. But we don't expect companies to be flawless anymore. We expect them to be flawsome and to show us some humility, and show us fun, playfulness, responsibility. When we make a mistake, we say, okay, that's how we learn, and we're gonna fix it. Like an oil spill, it's not like, oh, I hope nobody saw it, like it used to be. Like I hope nobody saw this, these mistakes I did. And when we sum up all that shame, and we don't really want to show it, then we get the financial crisis. But when we show that we're totally flawsome and we're doing our best and we're going to continue doing it, that's courage. And it's vulnerability and courage.
And it seems like more and more people are doing that. I mean, we just had a situation in Norway where there was a politician coming out and saying, I did wrong, I did wrong, yes. I did wrong. Yes. And then the newspaper said, now we don't have anything to write about because we were going to give this information to the public, but you came first.
Yeah. It was the mayor of Oslo. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm going to fix this up. And the media was like, what do we do? And that's war journalism. We're moving towards peace journalism. We have to, because people own their own story. The mayor of Oslo owned his own story.
It's his story.
It's his story. He owns it, and he writes about it on Facebook. And the media, the regular media, gets so angry because the story is torn from their hands. And that's what's going to happen. People around us will own their stories and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to fix it. It's no big deal. It's being human. And the media, the big media houses that continues to do war journalism will go bankrupt. That's what we see now. That's what's called the media crisis. And we should actually, in a way, even though it's very hard, it's a very hard transition for the press and for the media these days, and a lot of stress, but it's actually the only thing that's happening. It's a model, it's an old-fashioned model that doesn't work anymore. We need to find a new model for the press. And it's not only being critical. It's actually, I would think 10 years from now, we're talking about hope. We're talking about the media telling stories about hope, because you find hope all over. What we do now in the media is releasing hopelessness. It's a tsunami of bad things.
But I think that's why also people, or at least I can only speak for myself, that I don't read that much news or watch news anymore, because it's depleting me of energy. And I've realized that if I don't have energy, I have nothing to give. So I have to protect myself. Exactly. But if they have
even
another
science show that. I'm sorry.
Well, if they have another way of showing news, or having more positive news and news that can actually help us in a way, or give us opportunities to help people, then, things can change. And I think we all have to change. But maybe this will happen when the media realizes that they're not selling papers anymore.
That's what happens. You help us by not reading. You help us change. It's true. And the mayor of Oslo helps us by owning his story, instead of, I need to find a media strategy to sort this out. He's just coming out blank and say, hey. And that's how we show back to the back to the pupils and our children, we show them that we make mistakes and it's okay. And we can show them we cry, it's okay. We can show them we're uncertain and it's okay, because that's being human. So I call this the age of generosity we're heading towards. You could call it the age of the age of humanism. We're moving towards a humanism. We're being human. We're not human doings anymore. Like what I do defines me. We're human beings, and we're all connected. And we have such a great impact on each other. And we talk about the freedom of speech. The media now talks about the freedom of speech. It's very important. But what we will be talking much, much more about when we going into this new era is the responsibility of speech. Because we don't really take responsibility of what we write and the stories we're actually telling. Because I think they can start wars. When we do not take responsibility for what we say and the stories we tell, we light up fires like gasoline on a fire. The press can be. And that's dangerous. We have to have a huge discussion on how we as journalists take responsibility for the stories we send out there.
And in the book you were writing about how you looked at the future, and I thought it was so beautiful because I so agreed with that vision. And to go back to the school, how the teacher also were learning from the pupils, and the pupils were, they were learning from each other, and how the pupils were working with things they were good at instead of only the things they weren't good at. And that is something I am focused on. I mean, I'm a teacher student myself, and I see how not all pupils are very good in mathematics. And of course, they should have the basic skills, but they have other talents which can be brought forward. And I think that can be something in the future, that we help them find their own talents and develop them.
That's exactly, and the different intelligences we have is also going to be more. We're actually going to be more curious about how large we are, how different skills we have, and take a step back when we see people doing things differently. We don't think fast and judge them. We take a step back and say, "Wow, that was new. That's interesting," instead of judging. And in the schoolroom, I think it was Albert Einstein. I mean, these cultural changes takes hundreds of years, but we have to fight for them and we have to believe them. Albert Einstein, he said that if you judge a fish on his ability to climb a tree, of course he's going to fail.
And I just wrote that on my Facebook page 2 days ago.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see it.
It's a synchronicity.
It's a synchronicity. And synchronicities also is when we have a calling, when we're connected to this huge human experience. In every moment we can have these synchronicities. And I didn't used to believe in it. I didn't used to see it. But after the awakening, after I now see the largeness of it all, I heard someone say that only 4% of the universe is something we can solid or we can touch and feel. The 96% is dark. It's a dark matter. It's dark matter. We don't know what it is. So, what the bleep do we know? It's like it's amazing, and I think even in academia, even in the sciences, we will have an awakening of how little we actually know.
That's vulnerable.
That's very vulnerable. It's very vulnerable. Yeah, it is, and it's very inspiring. And I used to say that because this has been it's startled so much discussion and so much talks and so much both ridicule and
in Norway, you mean?
In Norway, ridicule and interest. I usually say that I'm a journalist. These things don't happen because I wrote this book. I mean, the generosity, the talk about generosity doesn't happen because I wrote this book. I wrote this book because it happens. I'm a journalist. I'm only reporting in a mega trend that it's hard to not see it when you look when you see on social media how it connects us. Of course, there's a lot of bad things happening in the world, but still, Harvard professor Steven Pinker, his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, he has a huge research team that see that it's never been as peaceful in the world as it is right now. Maybe not this summer. It's been a terrible summer in the Middle East, in Syria, in Ukraine. So that's like a peak the wrong way. But the trend is we're being more peaceful. We want to be more peaceful. We're more considerate. We're taking, like Daniel Kahneman says, a step back before I hit someone in the face because I don't agree with them. I take this step back. More and more of us do that now. And we teach our children how to be considerate and curious and hopefully courageous and vulnerable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's, I could talk about this for years, and I will.
Yes,
hopefully.
And I really recommend that you're reading this book because, like I said, I was reading it I was in a theater play and I read it during the intermission and I started crying and my makeup was just like falling down, but it was
it's
so...
oxytocin.
Yes. So where can people...
Connection.
Where can people get your book and when is it coming out?
This is a free sample. It's free online on issue.com. Also a very generous place. On issue.com, if you go to issue, put in the age of generosity from envy to admiration. I think it's enough with just the age of generosity. You find it on issue. And it's first 40 pages. And it's still being translated as we speak. So I hopefully the winter 2015, next winter, next spring.
And that is going to be on my site, so you can also get it there. Is there anything you want to say in the end?
No, I want to thank you for actually being a part of the media revolution, because people who just do it like you, and that's what you do. You go and make interviews that you would like to see on TV, but you don't see them. So you make them yourself. That is, you're a part of the media revolution. And you're obviously a peace journalist. And it's you're doing your share. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, that's nice to hear. It's just something I need to do. I don't know why, but
it's coming from inside. It's a vision. It's what you're supposed to do. It's a huge contribution.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for watching, guys, and much, much light from Oslo.
Yes.
Bye-bye.